So good evening, everybody, and apologies for the slight delay tonight. We just had internet issues. I can talk to people all over the world, but trying to talk to somebody in Limerick proves a challenge. You're welcome to episode 13 of Meet the Judge. And tonight my guest hails from Limerick, a very popular and well-respected judge worldwide. And like a lot of Irish judges, is second generation. Also chairman of Limerick and District Canine Association, which is probably one of the biggest shows on the Irish dog scene. Good evening, Anthony.
Good evening, Colin, and
How are
welcome.
you?
Not too bad. A lot better now that we actually got connectivity.
So yes, the problems with live broadcast.
Absolutely.
I bet you Gay Byrne could probably teach us a thing or two.
Colin, before you go into the process, I'd just like to express sympathy to Tom Kramer and his family on the recent passing of Kay. It was a bit of a shock when I read it yesterday. Kay was a really true gun dog person and a cocker person, as you know. And I have very fond memories of Kay. And, it was a complete surprise. And also, it was sad to see Alan Greer, who passed away also, a young man. Yes. I think it's probably, with COVID and the restrictions, it's probably the one thing this year that is the hardest of all is to lose a loved one. But then for friends and family to be, not be able to express and go to a funeral, that is very, very difficult for people. So my sincere sympathy to both the Kramers and to the Greers, and it's a very sad day.
And I completely join you in that. I grew up in short trousers with Kay Kramer often giving me a slap. But when I went into gun dogs in the early 80s, I learned so much from Kay, and she was always very willing to give of her knowledge. And I know Rita's father and the McCarrys had very close ties with the Kramers. So absolutely, it's been a rough time for dogs in Ireland recently, and gun dogs particularly.
It has been tough, we're in unprecedented times. Nobody's experienced what we're really experiencing now. And I know it's difficult for people. There's no shows in Ireland. There's very little shows being held in the world. There are some pockets of shows, but really there's huge restrictions attached to those. And I can appreciate it. But, when you learn of the passing of people away, like we just mentioned, that brings things home that, dogs are important, of course they are, and we'll be back again. But when we do return, there'll be probably a number of people that won't be there. And that's very sad,
Yeah. And I know, like myself, you have worked through the whole COVID since March, since lockdown. Are you finding it any easier these days?
It started to ease a bit. We saw June and July weren't bad months, but now we're seeing a spread that's kind of hitting all quarters in the community, in housing settings. It's starting to get a bit worrying a bit again now. You see the likes of Germany and France with huge cases, Spain, and we have winter approaching us now, and that's going to be a huge challenge. We always have problems with the winter flu, but now with COVID on top of it, with schools going back now, some are just gone back and the rest are going back on Monday. So slightly concerned at the way things are progressing at the moment.
It does seem to be, they do seem to be controlling it though. I mean, the numbers are, whilst they're possibly up to the hundreds each day, it doesn't seem to be going beyond that, thank God.
No, it's not, but it's still too high, and we have to manage. Thankfully, the number of inpatients in hospitals hasn't gone up a huge amount, but it's still a concern because one day, as coming out of 164, you drop down then to maybe 85, and then it goes up again. I'm not too sure today, maybe 142. That fluctuation is not a good way to be. We'd like to see it down, definitely in the 20s to 30s at least, you know, to feel
At
very,
least.
very.
But do you think, is it complacency now, Anthony, or did we go back too soon?
I don't think we went back too soon. I think people were getting a bit tired of restrictions. You know, I think people in general are abiding by the guidelines, but then again, there's some pockets where they aren't abiding it. And, you know, that is a problem in itself. I don't know the answer. You know, you hear different things. I feel sorry for the pub trade, and us Irish like drink, but, you know, I do feel sorry for them. But you can imagine if, you know, we opened the pubs, we would have a problem, you know, and a big problem. So I honestly don't know how it's going to go. I think it's been handled right, but I just hope people, you know, really adhere to what's being given in advice, and young people especially, because, you know, we're hearing now that the likes of house parties and so forth are a huge problem, and, you know, it's very difficult to manage that.
It is, and I think there is, and we won't dwell on this for too much longer, but I do think there is that air of invincibility amongst the younger generation that, oh, it's not going to affect us. But it's the people at home that they're bringing it back to that is going to be the issue.
I 100% agree with you. And, you know, that is the big problem, because, you know, I understand we were all young at the end of the day, though, but this is not, you know, normal times we're in.
No.
And we need to really and truly contain this, or we're going to face serious difficulties, and nobody wants to return to a total lockdown. And that's something that will be resisted as best possible.
Yeah. So, moving on, Anthony, and I mentioned earlier in your introduction that you are, like a lot of judges in Ireland, you're second generation. Were there always dogs in the house when you were growing up? Were your parents heavily involved in showing, or how did it come back about, and what made you follow on in their footsteps?
I suppose I was born into dogs, really. You know, my father always had dogs. We had a German Shepherd, we had a Golden Retriever, and then my father fell for the West Highland White Terrier. Now, my mother was the I suppose in many cases, I suppose in dog homes, my mother was really in the background when there was litters. Mum was the one that was actually looking after them. Dad just really enjoyed the showing aspect, and, you know, he just loved the West Highland White Terriers. So obviously from birth upwards, I was just surrounded with dogs, and, you know, I just loved them. And I suppose how I changed when my father passed away, my mother and myself continued with the West Highland White Terriers, but I wanted my own breed, because I always associated Dad with the West Highland White Terrier. So I remember at 17 years of age, the late Pater Crowley gave me a book. He was a next door neighbour, literally next door to us where we lived. And I went through the book, and suddenly this breed just kind of just stuck out that bit, and it was the Shetland Sheepdog.
Okay.
And I decided then that this was going to be the breed that's going to be identified by myself as my breed, and have my independence, you know.
Like a lot of us.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was how, back then, it's probably the wrong word, but, you know, Shetland sheepdogs numerically were quite strong.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and still are, but I mean, years ago they were probably one of the strongest breeds in Irish dogs. So, how long did it take you to crack the breed, as it were?
Well, you know, my very first Shetland sheepdog came from the Glenowend kennel, and that was the late Mary Crowley's kennel. And I remember going up to Dublin to meet Mary for the first time. And I didn't realise the role she had in the kennel club. I was still young. And I remember going to her house, and most beautiful. Now, Mary had different she had pups that were spoken for and whatever, but she had one put aside for ourselves. And of course, Patrick Crowley being a very prominent person in dogs, I think Mary was being extra careful to make sure this was going to be a good one. So it was a sable bitch, and basically she was very, very nice, and I done very well with her. Now, going back in them days, you had the 40-point system, and you had to have majors. Now, she started off very well. She done exceptionally well at open and limit shows. She then won the Green Stars, and she actually managed to get the 3 majors, but never got the 4th major.
You're joking.
No, never. She had something like 72 points, and I still could not get that elusive major. And, you know, maybe in hindsight, it might have been a bad thing because, you know, your first dog and you make it up a champion, that gives you a certain cockiness that, you know, try and beat that. So maybe it was fate, I don't know. But what was interesting at the time was, now there's probably a lot of the breeders at the time and exhibitors at the time they're no longer showing in the Shetland Sheepdogs, but they're still around, thankfully. The bitch I had was actually the correct height and everything, but the prominent breeders at the time, the dogs they had were just a bit below size. Okay. So one bitch looked too big, but in actual fact, if you measured her, she was actually the correct height for the standard. And that kind of blew my chances, as they say. But, you know, when I look back on it, the joy I got, and I bred from her and bred a fantastic homebred champion. But, you know, it's interesting to see how prominent breeders can slightly alter the playing field. And, you know, I just was a casualty of that. But in hindsight, you know, maybe it was a good thing, because I always feel that somebody who's new into dog showing, and if they make up their very first dog as a champion, they think the next one will come along and the next one will come along. But we all know that doesn't happen that easily.
Yeah. So your first champion then was a homebred?
She was, yeah.
Well, that's no mean feat.
No, it wasn't. I was very fortunate that, you know, I produced a litter, which was very, very nice. But this bitch was really outstanding. She was practically undefeated. She won the club show in the centenary year. She won groups. She won one reserve best in show. But she was a beautiful, beautiful sable bitch, and I was so proud of her. And you know, to have her out of my very first Shetland sheepdog, you know, it was a great achievement, and it was, you know, she gave me great job. She was made up. I think she was only 2.5, and she was an Irish champion, which was very good. Yeah, and as you say, you know, the breed that time was very, very strong in numbers.
Yeah. And I think you probably mentioned a few already, but when you started showing, who were the people that most influenced you?
Who influenced me? Well, obviously, there's no doubt about it. My next door neighbour, the late Patrick Crowley, was incredible. You know, he was a man that was, you know, dogdom personified, really. He was a fantastic mentor. He was well respected. He really kept me grounded, and you know, he was invaluable when it came to understanding dogs, learning about dogs, what to watch for. So he certainly was a person that I had huge regard for, and you know, he was so well respected. He was a person that was ahead of his time in dogs, you know, in a sense that he was innovative. You know, recently I heard Kathy and Sean's interview, and they mentioned Patter in that interview, and he had this thought, and he put linseed oil into the cloth because he felt that dogs that were a bit nervous, that he'd wipe his hands with it. And, you know, I think it did work, you know, that it seemed to calm some of them. So, you know, but that was a trait that he had, and, you know, interesting, you know, trait that he had. So he undoubtedly was a great influence
I actually think,
to me.
I actually think, you know, Patter has crept up from time to time in conversations, that he had such an influence on a lot of people. I mean, you know, even growing up, I remember Patter when I was showing Shih Tzus, and he always had a great interest in Shih Tzus. and he was always willing to give advice, always willing to help, and missed.
Absolutely, and people of that caliber, we certainly have them, but that people are passing away in that, and there's a lot of knowledge with those people that might have been passed on. Patter was one of the few people, I suppose, that actually was very obliging and very helpful to anybody he met and encountered. I remember an incident, actually. We ran training classes in Limerick, and I remember this gentleman came in. I won't mention his name because he's a very good friend of mine, but he came in with this sheltie. But the sheltie now was, to say the least, well oversized. And I remember Patter, the gentleman came up to Patter and he said, "Can you tell me, I'm after getting this dog, absolutely love this dog. Do you think it'll become, a winner, and will it be a champion?" And Patter, I could see he was slightly perplexed a bit, and he said, "It's a lovely dog. It'll make a lovely pet." But the ironic part about it is that man that had that dog went on to show at championship show level, and he didn't win, but he showed at open shows. And I remember there was an agricultural show in Charleville, and Martin, I don't know who, the Labrador, famous Labrador, Phillipstown, he was judging at the show. And I remember, and you know yourself, Colin, at agricultural shows, there's a lot of local dogs. You wouldn't see those type of dogs really at championship shows as such. And I remember my friend won the group and then went on for the best unbeaten. And I'll never forget it. Martin was looking at the lineup and whatever way, I said to myself, Jesus, I said, I think he's going to go for the sheltie. And down Martin goes and gave the rosette to that man. And I've never seen a person jump so high in all my life. So while he might have made a nice pet, he won best unbeaten that day. And that was, that's a good story. And it very happened,
And do you think people starting showing now, or younger people, do you think they realise the value of having mentors like Patter or Mary Crowley or Kay Cream or whoever we've mentioned?
Yeah. I don't think mentoring, I'm not aware of any mentoring scheme that the Kennel Club run. I know now it's up to individuals to go to the established and recognised breeders and that. I valued it immensely. And, I was very fortunate that Patter was my mentor. And not alone Patter, though. I've gone to other prominent people. I'm not one bit afraid to ask a person, for advice. And I think that's very important, that you need to do that. You can read a breed standard as much as you want, but I'll tell you, you cannot beat the words of a wise, practical breeder, established breeder, I think it's very important.
That's so true. So when did you first start judging?
I actually started judging in 1982.
Okay.
And I judged quite a few open and limited shows. And you know what? They were very, very good as a starting point. You started off, obviously, within the group you were in, but, you got to do then variety classes and that. And I enjoyed them. I really did enjoy them. They weren't just a show. They were, people had young dogs they were bringing out. Yes, you had the more experienced dogs there. It was a family event. People went, they made a day out going to an open show. There was great, because that elusive Green Star wasn't to play for on the day, open shows were very much a fun event. So I really enjoyed judging many open and limited shows. And then in 1988, I judged Green Stars for the first time at the Trillian District Canine Club. The show was held in the school in Tralee Town itself. And you were right in saying the sheltie entry was very high at the time. It was my first time. And I remember, I think there was, something like 79 shelties. It was a massive entry. And I can still remember it very, very vividly and really enjoyed the experience. And I suppose because you're judging your own breed, that, you're comfortable.
Yes.
But, at the end of the day, every time to this very day, before I start judging, I'm always nervous. I'm always uneasy. I'm nervous.
Likewise.
And, I don't know why I can't, say to myself after so many years of judging, 38 years, why I'm like this. But you know what? It's the way I am. And I am nervous when I judge. But the minute the first class starts and I put my hand on the first dog, completely relaxed. And then I go into my own world, my own zone.
And I think you make it's a very valid point you make over open shows and limited shows. They were a great grounding because you were judging varieties of breeds and your peers, and they were hard to do, particularly when the numbers were much higher. I think the demise of open and limit shows for up and coming judges is going to have a counterproductive effect, because I think, as you say, it did. You were very nervous going in on your first limit show appointment or open show appointment.
Yes.
And they were a great grounding.
Absolutely. And, I think, that I learned so much from them. And, as you said, I used to always be very nervous of doing variety classes because you could have breeds from any group in those classes. And, it took, effort and planning and studying to feel that comfortable. And even at that, you're starting off, but yet they were invaluable in my career as a judge to progress on to the championship shows. And it's funny, I can tell you, I remember I was judging an open show, and best unbeaten was to be jointly judged by myself and another judge. And the other judge was actually Willie Daly from Nina. And I remember we both judged what we judged our respective groups, whatever, and then the lineup came in. And I remember it came to the situation whereby neither of us could agree on which dog should get the best unbeaten. So I remember then they had to call in the independent judge. But the independent judge happened to be the late Patter Crowley, and Willie was a great friend of Patter's, as I was. So I was smiling away and saying to myself, well, I have a good chance here now. And lo and behold, Patter sided with Willie Daly. So that taught me a lesson. Never count your chickens. I can assure you, I can remember it still.
Oh, that's very good. So when you started judging, what was the best piece of advice you were given?
The best piece of advice, and I stand by it myself in how I judge, is that, when I judge a class and the dogs come in, my eye will tell me, I go and I look down the line, and I basically, what catches my eye, and of course then you have to examine them and move them. But I think it's, I think your eye is so important. If you haven't got an eye for a dog, you can read the breed standards till you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
It's just the eye is the best tool you have. The second thing I will say is that, unless something shows up that is unexpected, go with your first instinct. If you start to doubt yourself, you're going to start to lose your train of thought. And you must be decisive. So I'm a very decisive judge. When I make my mind up, I go and I choose what I want, and I stand. And then finally, the most important thing is stand over your decision, no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's the way I would approach it.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think is right or wrong, make your decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because there are always more people watching from outside the ring than there are inside, and if you're not decisive, people lose faith. They
do, and Colm, the best judges in the world are always going to be outside the ring. Yes. But the real judge is the person in the ring.
Yeah.
And I think too, as well, there's a different train of thought as to, when you sit outside and you observe a judge. I think it's important like for example, that you judge to type. People can understand that. They mightn't accept your decision making, but a lot, in my experience, people will acknowledge that, you know, when you judge to type, they can see what you're doing, they see the logic behind it. And I think on the whole, they do accept it, you know.
Yes.
And, I think that's very important as well.
So when did you achieve all breed status?
I achieved it in 2011. And I remember I was at, I never even realized I was even in that zone. I remember I went to the Champion of Champions that your very own club, the Dublin Dog Show, ran. And I remember Josie Foley saying to me, Anthony, you know, you're very close to being an all-rounder. And I said, Josie, I think now you need to drink water. I said, no way. I said, I couldn't be. And when I actually looked into what I had judged over the years, I said, okay, I'm actually quite close. Now, it took me 29 years to get that status. So that didn't happen overnight.
No.
And,
No.
you know, and I didn't progress every year either. And, you know, but 29 years is a long time. But, you know, as I said, 2011 was when I became an all-rounder.
And roughly how many countries have you judged in?
I was doing a tally on that during the week, and because it's, you know, sometimes people ask me, you know, or you know, you'd say, you know, where did you judge last? And I'd be trying to think. I said, hold on now, you know, where was I, or what was the country I was in last? But I've judged in 40 countries to date. So 40 countries is a lot of countries to judge in, and you know, and I don't judge maybe at most 12, 13 times a year because I'm working full time. So it's not so easy for me to just go away weekend after weekend. And the majority of times I have to travel up from Limerick to Dublin. So you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning. You go to the airport. You're lucky if you have a direct flight. And if you don't have a direct flight, it's a second flight. And then you arrive over in the country you're going to, and you can end up being in a car for 2 or 3 hours. So it's not all glamour. When people think, isn't it fantastic to go and judge in all these countries? Yes, it is, but there's a price to pay for it too.
It's hard work. I don't think, and you can have 2 days of very full-on entries with critiques.
Absolutely. 2 days. Shows now, Colin, in the Nordic countries are now turning into 3 and 4 day shows.
Yes.
If you go and judge in Australia, you'll definitely be judging a minimum of 4 days. And if you do a royal, you're talking 10 days. So, you know, that's no easy thing to do, you know. So it certainly does take a lot of time and effort out of you, you know, in judging these appointments abroad.
And aside from your own breeds now, is there a breed you really like to judge?
I gave that some thought, and I didn't have to think too hard. I love Labrador. I love the Labrador breed, and absolutely love Newfoundlands. I don't know what it is with them. They're such a majestic dog. They're just, you know, I've judged some fantastic Newfoundlands in Europe, and you know the quality of them is incredible. I remember on one occasion 120 of them, and you know that was a huge entry. But, you know, I wasn't daunted. I really and truly enjoy it. And that breed, it just has a special place for me. Now, it's very difficult to narrow it down, but, you know, I obviously love all dogs. But, you know, I always say to people, too, when they're inviting me to judge, while you're an all breeds judge, there are certain breeds and certain groups I don't feel 100% comfortable in. And I always say to them, my preference is, you know, I really love group 1, 2, and 3. I love group 5 and 6, 7 and 8. I love group 10, group 9. Starting to grow on me more and more, but there's breeds in there, and I'm very, very nervous about. You know,
very diverse, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, I think it's only fair to the organisers and exhibitors that it's great if you can judge in the groups that you really feel comfortable in. But of course, as we all know, it happens that you know you get breeds because you're an all breeds. You could find yourself over in a country, judge falls ill and doesn't turn up or whatever, and next thing they say, we'd like you to judge now this Thai Ridgeback, and I'm saying, oh my God, what is that? You know, and you can say no.
No.
And they're eating the standard, sick as anything about it, and you know, but you know, these things happen, and I call it the curse of being an all breeds judge.
But it is, you're quite, it is quite true. I mean, I'm group 8, like, you know, the American Cockers, gun dogs, give me them any day. I never get asked to do.
Yes, yeah, and that you know, it's amazing. Like Shetland sheepdogs, yes, I've judged them many times, but you know, if you take terriers, and that was the first breed, because as I said, my mother and myself continued in West Highland White Terriers, and basically I rarely get to judge terrier breeds, and very rarely get to judge West Highland White Terriers, and I'd love it, but unfortunately terriers are very sought after, and you know, they just see the all breed status, and you're just they assign what suits their needs, and that's what happens.
Yes, and as a show organisers, we understand that.
Absolutely, that's for sure.
So, is there a fault that really irritates you?
I'd say my ring stewards on many occasions. You know, obviously I hate hightails, and I certainly hate hightail. You know, the hightail absolutely, like you see a Sheltie and the tail is up like an umbrella. Absolutely changes the breed completely. You know, collies, border collies. You know, it's, you know, you have Airedales then with the tail and it's curled and curled. It's something I don't like, and but you know, don't get me wrong. Of course, you know, we all love to see the tail set correct. It can be slightly high, but when it goes right up over the back, that to me is just a no-no. I just can't live with it. And another fault, I suppose, that I find inexcusable is the movement. If movement isn't right, and you know, what galls me is, you know, you might have a lineup of maybe 15 or 20 in a class, and you walk down, like I say, I walk down, and what catches my eye, I kind of nearly have my winner, my top 4 nearly in my mind, and you then go over them, and then you go to move them, and you say, oh my God, what in the hell is happening here? The back end, and I just say, oh, good God. And it absolutely, you know, it's a killer, an absolute killer. But look, these things happen.
Yeah, when you start off in your heads which way they're going to go, and you say, oh no, that's 4th. And the next one, oh no, that's 4th.
Yeah.
It's the 4th rule. Sure. So, as an all breeds judge, and you judged, as you say, in over 40 countries, a lot of these countries would have critiques.
Yes.
How do you approach critiquing, and do you see a value to them?
I do see a value to them. I see a value to myself because it focuses the mind. You're in different countries in Europe, and English is not their first language, but believe me, they understand English very, very well. And, you know, you're giving a critique on a dog, and, you know, you have to be truthful and honest, but you have to be sensible too. Like you take, you know, the Nordic countries, they have high standards, they have very good quality dogs, and you know, it's important that, you know, you do the correct critique. And I find that, you know, there's no point stating the obvious, but yet, you know, I think it's important you mention the positives and some, obviously, that you'd like more of, you know, the weaknesses, and you know, but you have to word it right, because at the end of the day, you know, it's your opinion. Another judge has a different opinion, but I think critiquing is important, and especially for novices and people that are, you know, just starting off or getting, you know, progressing in showing, and that they need to know what's right and what's wrong. So, but I think sometimes people, you know, I take, for example, Italy. The Italians don't like criticism too well. I hope anybody from Italy tonight doesn't mind me saying that, but it's the truth. You know, and I'm very conscientious too that, you know, we all love our dogs no matter what way they are. So I try to be kind, But it's important to distinguish too, of course, why did you give the CQ or the CAC to the person, and what was the difference between that and the reserve? You have to specify, there has to be a difference. You can't give the winner and the reserve winner the same critique and nothing different between them. And what's that about? At the end of the day, there's a reason why you picked your best, and it has to have that bit of an edge more than the dog that came reserved to it. And exhibitors will challenge you.
And do you have a set system when you're critiquing? I mean, do you like to critique them as you're going over them? Do you like to go over them, move them, and then sit down and write your critiques? Do you start at the head and work to the tail?
I start basically. It depends. It depends on the numbers. As you know, you could have anything up to 100. I know that the ruling is normally around 80. If I have around the 80 dog mark, I would, because I'm not too slow of a judge, I would, you have a bit of comfort there. 80 is quite fine. The 100 would be a lot. I always start with examining the dog. So I would start at the head and work my way through the dog. And obviously then I would call out, as I'm going over the dog, my critique to the writer that's writing it up. Then obviously then I move them, and then when they've moved, I'm able to finish off on that aspect of the critique and then the grading. So that's generally the way I do it, and I think it's easier to do it that way, and it keeps the flow just nicely. And you know what? It's 100% kind of accurate because, especially if you're judging for a few hours, and if you were doing it whereby you examine the dog, you move the dog, and then do the critique, as the day goes on, human nature, you get a bit tired. By doing it as you're going over the dog, it's there and now. So so I find it works best for me to do it that way.
Okay. Tagging on with the critiquing, CQs, or CKs, as some people like to call them. Do you like that particular system? Do you think we should introduce it here?
I do like it. I think at the end of the day, it's a grading, and I think it's appreciated by people. Like, take for example, you have a young dog. It's in development. It's maturing. It's not quite there yet, but you can see that this dog is going to go the whole way. So I think it's very encouraging for the exhibitor, to get that grading. And I see no reason why it can't come in Ireland. I think it should only be given out though when you really believe it deserves it.
Absolutely.
And as you know yourself, Colin, in some European countries now, you can award an excellent and withhold the CAC. Now, that's something I don't feel very comfortable with, because I feel if a dog is graded excellent, why then would you not award the CAC?
Absolutely.
And that's something I find bizarre, and I don't like it, and I've never done it. If it gets an excellent from me, it's entitled to be considered then to get the CAC or the CACB.
But by definition, if you're according to FCI, if you award an excellent, you are saying it is of champion quality.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I agree with you. I don't see the logic.
I don't, and I'm abiding by the ruling. Excellent means it is entitled to get the award.
And how do you deal with irate exhibitors or exhibitors that may not necessarily agree with your decision and challenge you?
Of course, you've a couple of scenarios there, Colin. You have a novice, for example, and they think their dog is the best dog that's there, and some are, they basically don't. If you give them a very good, they're not happy with that. But I would point out to them why they didn't get an excellent and explain it to them. And when you reason with them, the majority will accept it. I remember judging in Poland, and I was judging Pyrenean mountain dogs. And as you know, in a lot of countries in Europe, you could have people from many different countries within Europe coming to shows. So I was judging the breed, and I downgraded the champion, and I didn't like its movement. And the person that was handling the dog waited for me to finish, and then came into the ring and said, he had very, very broken English, so he had somebody with him that could interpret. He was French. And he basically was very irate that I did not give his dog the award. And he said, this dog is a champion in France. And I just said to him, I said, I'm so happy it's a champion in France. Today it's my opinion, but it's not going to be a champion under me. And you know, it's not easy to do it, but I could tell him, and I explained. And while he half accepted my explanation, he still felt because his dog is a champion, nobody should knock it. Well, I'm sorry, that was not going to happen for me. So, you know, you get it. But on the whole, I think if you reason with people, and we all know our dogs, we all know what faults our dogs, there's no perfect. And, you know, I always say to people too, today it's my opinion. Tomorrow there'll be another judge, and they might not agree with me, and you could have a better day. That's what it's all about. We all have different opinions, and that's what makes the dog hobby that we have interesting.
Yes, and as Rita always says, you know, if all judges agreed, there would be no need for dog shows. We could send the rosettes out in the post.
Absolutely.
Susan White is just asking here that, you know, we've mentioned that, you know, it's the norm in the likes of Italy or Scandinavia for exhibitors to ask judges their opinion of why they didn't necessarily. And she's just saying that, you know, it's frowned upon here. And do you have an idea as to why it's so frowned upon here to challenge a judge?
I don't think it should be frowned upon, but it is. I think it's like the restaurant scenario. You go to a restaurant and you have a meal, and the meal isn't great. I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 people will say nothing to the restaurant, and they'll come away and they'll tell everybody, terrible meal, don't go there. And I'd say to people, why did you not bring it to the attention of the restaurant? So I see no reason. I know it's difficult, but in Ireland, people tend to walk out of the ring not happy or whatever, but I think they should ask you why you gave the decision you gave. But, you know, I think that will change.
Yes.
People are getting more assertive, but I think it has to be done in a nice way too. I think the worst thing you could do is to come in a kind of a high temper and to attack a person. You should never attack a person.
No.
Go in and ask them. And you know, how many times have, you know, if you said, really, I didn't like the back movement, or I thought the front movement wasn't the best, or whatever, and you know there's nothing wrong with the front movement, I would say to the judge, thank you very much, smile away and say, that judge hasn't a clue. And you know what? But at least challenge them.
Yeah. So, what's been your biggest judging achievement to date?
It would be remiss of me to say, I suppose, judging Best in Show for the Irish Kennel Club, my own kennel club, my own country, judging Best in Show at the international show that the Kennel Club ran, that was an absolutely honour and probably the highlight of my judging career. That said, you then have Europe, and I remember I judged in Holland. I judged Best in Show, and the Dutch certainly know how to run a show. And I remember before I judged Best in Show, I was told I had to go to this hall, and they were going to do an introduction. And I went to this hall anyway, and there was this open-top Cadillac with 2 Irish wolfhounds in the back seat. And I had to get in between the 2 Irish wolfhounds, and I was driven into the ring, and they had Enya singing in the background. And the car drove around the full ring. And I just said, here goes. It's either going to go horribly right or wrong. I literally leapt out of the car and thankfully landed on my feet without even coming through the door. and there was uproar around the ring, and everybody was clapping and everything. I don't know how I didn't kill myself, but that was some way to enter a ring to judge best in shows. That certainly was a highlight I won't forget.
And can we just clarify that Enya wasn't actually there?
Oh, no. She was playing in the background on maybe cassette column, or I don't know if they had CDs then. I better be careful. I'm not that old, but they certainly, though, she was singing in the background on a recorded device, but certainly she wasn't there. And it's interesting, I put up a standard poodle that day, and poodles are a difficult enough breed to judge. And the breed was judged on the day by Claire Coxall. And I remember when I awarded the best in show, you have your final 4 dogs, and that Claire Coxall got up, ran right out into the middle of the ring, was massive, and gave me the biggest hug and kiss, and was so thrilled. She didn't judge the group; she judged at breed level, and she said to me, she said, "Fair play," she said. She said, "That was one of the best I've ever judged, and I've had many a good dog." But she said, "I was so delighted to see that dog get what it deserved." So, it was nice to hear from somebody like her caliber. The decision I made was for her the right one, and for me it was the right one.
And just aside from those that you've already mentioned, do you have any real big heroes or people you really admire, past or well, maybe not present, but because people may, but from the past?
Yes, of course, Patrick Crowley has to be, my number one. And another person that I really admire and have great time for is Anne Ingram. I absolutely have her in the highest regard. She, like myself, was born and reared into dogs, and she is a great ambassador for this country. But Anne has judged in so many countries, is so well respected, so well regarded. I've sat and watched her judge on many occasions, and I'm in awe to see how she judges, and her ability and her understanding, and how the exhibitors really value her and value her opinion. So she's certainly a person that would be a great person I admire. There's other people then. I have great time for Hans van den Berg. I really enjoy that gentleman. He's a friend, but he is a character, but he's such a passionate, knowledgeable man, and so well regarded and so well respected.
Yeah.
And, there are plenty of people, but another person who doesn't judge anymore now, from Finland, is Rainer Vernon. And that has, I have the deepest respect for him. Such a knowledgeable man as well. And I remember I was judging Shelties, and I judged collies, but I remember the collie I put up was from the veteran class. And, the quality was very mixed, but the veteran was just stole my heart. And I remember I judged a group. And I always find that, when you're out there judging, and you're judging in a group, you have all your fellow judges sitting there, passing judgment or whatever. And I don't really care, because it's my ring and it's my decision. But I was there and I was judging the group, and I just couldn't take my eye. For a veteran to move around the ring like that did, and I said, "Here goes. I'm going to actually give it to group." And I said, "Oh my God, was that the right thing to do?" There was some very, very nice dogs. And when I came in and sat down, Rainer came over to me and he said, "I gave it its first best in show." And he said, "That is an outstanding dog." And he said, "I'm so delighted that at 13 years of age, you gave it, the group today." He said, I'm so happy that you recognized what the breed represents, and this is everything and more, because he said it's an outstanding dog. And it was a very top-winning dog. It just goes to show that a veteran can take on the best.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So just moving on now, you, as I said in your introduction, you're very involved in the running of Limerick and District. You're chairperson of Limerick and District, which is arguably one of the best shows and one of the largest shows in the country. But you're also involved at Breed Club level. You've been involved in the Arcoilia, the Irish Kennel Club, for many years in the past. How important do you think it is to give something back to the sport that we love? And do you think young people understand, or new people, do you think enough of them are willing to put themselves forward these days?
Well, if you take in Ireland, if you look at the majority of clubs today, the same people, and they're not young, it's very difficult to attract people to come on a committee. There's no issue whatsoever with having people looking to judge. There's plenty of people lined up there, mad eager to judge. But clubs in general around Ireland are run by people, like I'm 40 years this year involved in Limerick and District. I've held many roles in my own local club. But, you know, I look at clubs there, and the people that are involved are there, and if they weren't, there's nobody new coming on. There's very few clubs that have young people putting themselves forward to help clubs, and that's worrying in a lot of aspects, because clubs can go if there's nobody behind the existing people. And we're getting older. You need young blood. You need people, but I think it should be probably. I know you can't make it mandatory, but I think it should be part and parcel of maybe being a judge, that you should give something back. That I still ring steward at shows. It's I enjoy it, and at the end of the day, I think it's important to help our national kennel club whenever you can. As you say, I was on the Ardcorla. I enjoyed it. It's an important role that you have. I represented the Westie Club. And, I think it is important that you do put something back into what the hobby we love. And, we need people to get involved, because I'm very fearful that clubs in general, with the age profile a lot of them are going to have problems down the road. And I would hate to see that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. You're right. It is now part of the judging education system that judges do need to be involved within clubs, and they do need to be stewarding. But it's also now a requirement. So people do tend to get it out of their way and say, "Oh, I've done that bit."
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one, but we certainly do need young people.
We do, and if you take the Junior Handlers Association, I remember when I was in that kind of age category, and many years after I went out of that category, how many followed through, continuing in the hobby we're involved in. The Junior Handlers numbers have come down a lot. I'm very happy to say that Limerick hosts the Junior Handler event at our show on the circuit, and I am we've never. Limerick are very happy to have it, but it's disappointing that the interest doesn't seem to follow through. Some have, and look at how well some of our junior handlers have done at international competition in Crufts and other events. So it's a pity that the youth aren't continuing on. And then why are they not? I don't know. What's the answer? How do we improve it? But we are seriously lacking in youth in the hobby we have.
But sadly as well, there weren't so many distractions when you and I were coming out of junior handling as there are now. So it is difficult. Do you think judges understand the role they have, or do you think they have a role in influencing the development of breeds?
Of course they have. At the end of the day, it's an important role. The role in judging in itself, it's important that you identify problems, you know, and like if you take the example of the system, the breed specifics, and whereby you have to, the breeds that are identified that are on the listing, you have to highlight the problems that are in those breeds. So that's a role we have to play. I think if there's something really wrong, I remember this person showed a dog under me and the mouth was wrong. The dog was, I think, coming close to 2 years. And I said to the handler, I said, listen, the mouth is not right. And they said, oh, the dog is young, it'll come right. And I said, no, it's not going to come right at 2. I said, it's not going to happen. And, you know, I said, to be honest with you, I said, I'm downgrading this dog. I said, I couldn't possibly put it up. But, you know, that person then told me that I had won under prominent judges. When I said, okay, if you did, I said, that's their decision. But I said, I certainly could not, in all consciousness, I said, ignore this. I said, it's a no-no for me. I said, and I said, I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. So, you know, if there are problems there, you need to identify them. And, you know, it's important that, you know, we don't give out awards just for the sake of it.
Yes.
And, you know, it goes back to the critiques. You need to put down, you know, exactly what you believe that needs to be said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And following on from that, and on a more serious topic, how do you feel the issue regarding brasscephalic breeds is being dealt with by various kennel clubs around the world? And how do you think we're going to withstand this pressure that we're coming under from activists and governments?
I'm very worried about it. And I think this is the tip of the iceberg. As we know, the situation in Holland and what's happened there, it was a joint collaboration between the government and the kennel club in that country. And, you know, I applaud the judges that are standing up for what they believe in. And, you know, it's not an easy thing to do. You know, there's a lot of people that will talk, as I call it, you know, silently, but they don't actually, they're not vocal, and that's wrong. I think that the FCI have a major role to play. The leading kennel clubs, the Kennel Club in the UK, the American Kennel Club, I think there's a couple of things that need to be done. I believe that in dogs, there's many people with fabulous expertise. Forget about the dogs. Lobbyists, legal people. Tap into that. We need to get organized. If you take the situation in Holland, now you have in Germany, the government are introducing that people have to exercise their dogs twice a day, I think a minimum of an hour each day. I read there recently now where there's Austria are implementing a ruling on dogs. It eludes me now, but they're certainly introducing some restriction on dogs. So, you know, that's seriously worrying. It won't stop at the list of breeds that have already been identified.
Absolutely
so, you know, we have to take a stand, and, you know, we need to get organized. The activists are very organized. They seem to have money behind them. But the FCI and other leading kennel clubs need to tap in. And I don't expect the president of the FCI or the president of any kennel club to put themselves forward. Tap into the resources we have within the dog world and get people who are, some people have very good expertise in areas. We need strong lobbyists. We need legal people. We need people to counter what's been done by these activists. And we also need to show them what we are doing. You know, there's a lot of work being done in the UK by the Kennel Club in the UK. You know, we're responsible people. The irresponsible people are the puppy farmers. And, you know, at the end of the day, people who are doing these, like, you know, it's incredible to see, through COVID, for example, the amount of designer dogs and the money that's been charged for these dogs. It's incredible. You know,
absolutely,
what's going on. So if we don't make a stand, and there's no point you and I are talking about it now, but we need to get organized. And certainly the FCI have the ability to really control this if they want to, because how many countries are affiliated to them, and they
Yeah.
need to join forces. And there's no point coming out and making statements. I want to see action.
Yeah. But the difficulty is, Anthony, that for 13 weeks I have sat here and spoken to various judges from around the world, and we all had the same opinion, and
Yeah,
is the opinion that you were voicing.
yeah.
But how do we, as judges, get the FCI to start doing so? Not even just the FCI, the Australian Kennel Club, the
Yeah,
Canadian Kennel, the Kennel
yeah,
Club London.
yeah.
We have to get our voices heard and try and get them to change their attitude, to
We have,
start setting up a committee.
we do. But you know, every country, including Ireland, the affected breeds, and those clubs need to put pressure on their own kennel clubs to do something. At the end of the day, we have representatives that go to FCI meetings. They need to bring the message loud and clear. So the clubs need to, and the affected breed clubs need to really lobby the people in their own country. It's very difficult to go and try to enlist support. Yes, of course, with other fellow breeders in other countries to spread the word that this is the approach. It has to start from the grassroots up, but the pressure has to be applied to our own national kennel clubs, who in turn then have to lobby the likes of FCI and make sure that something happens. It just has to happen. As you say, you could be talking again in another 12 weeks' time, and the same voice and opinion is there. But unless the breed clubs and judges from those countries support it, like I saw, I'm not taking sides, but like I have commented on what was happening in Holland. I'm not afraid to put down what I believe in, and I support and applaud the judges that are in that country. And I will do the very same for any other country, Germany or Austria, because there's no point a nod and a wink. You need to actually put it down there, and I'm not afraid to do it.
Well, on foot of these interviews, I have spoken, just without mentioning names, to a leading member of the Irish Kennel Club to see if we can try and spearhead something to the FCI as a country, as a nation, as a kennel club. So something may come of that. But it is a very serious. But it does need somebody to take the lead.
Of course it does. And at the end of the day, I don't expect in our own situation in Ireland, I don't expect the GP to take that task on, be solely responsible for it. Absolutely not.
No.
But I certainly believe that the clubs, and now that there's no dog shows, there's a void in our life to an extent. And now's the time, while we're not distracted by dog shows, to actually formulate a campaign. I'd like to see a policy. I'd like to see a campaign by the Kennel Club, coordinated by them, but involving all interested parties to get behind it. And you don't need to meet. You can put in submissions. You can certainly, you can hold meetings via Zoom if you have to, whatever. There's plenty of ways and means for us in Ireland to get behind this and to protect, because it's not going to stop, as I said, at the listed breeds. It's going to go on, and it's going to get a longer list. So every country, if they adopt that and put the pressure on, that's the way we will achieve something, rather than just having talking shops that don't really go anywhere.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And COVID has kind of taken over international affairs at the moment, but we do tend to forget that Brexit is still very much alive. And from this week's events, it does appear that it's going to be a no-deal Brexit.
Yes.
How do you think that's going to affect us on our?
I think we'll have serious problems in this country. We've already seen the increased activity regarding dogs going out of Ireland and coming back into Ireland. If our Irish economy is certainly going to suffer, and what is the knock-on effect of that? There's less money in there, so our sport is going to be under attack there, because obviously dog shows is a hobby, but if you've less money, you're going to have people that won't go to shows. the UK, there's a cohort of people that come over to show in Ireland. They're not going to come over in their numbers. They're going to feel the major impact of it also. So there's going to be a huge effect in particular between Ireland and the UK. And also we have a number of people, and it's a growing number now, that are going to shows in Europe. That in itself, could come to a sudden halt. And, you take entries at shows in Ireland, they have been dropping each year. And next January the 1st, 2021, if there's no deal, and we'll know very soon, because October, Europe keep on saying that if there is no firm agreement in place, that it'll be a no Brexit deal. And then we're going into the unknown. And I feel that shows are going to actually suffer. I think shows will stop being run by clubs. It won't be viable to run them. So Brexit is a huge worry and a huge factor. And it also depends too on what restrictions that are going to, because the UK are going to be out of Europe, so they could insist on so many different types of vaccines. They could insist in so much paperwork that people aren't going to be prepared to go down that route in order just to promote for their dogs. So that in itself is going to be a problem.
Yeah, we face troubling times, I think, on a lot of fronts at the moment. Absolutely. But to lighten the mood now, Anthony, what's your funniest or most embarrassing moment, either showing or judging?
I've had many. I remember I was judging at Kilkenny, and I was judging Untitled Breeds at the time, and I was judging Irish setters. And I was in the middle of my judging. I can't remember what class it was. And Maudie Burke and Patter Crowley was outside the ring. And next thing I saw, Maudie, I think it was Maudie, I could be wrong now, or Patter, walking into the ring. And I was saying to myself, oh my God, what have I done? And I was handed a coat, and I said, I don't need a coat. I said, I'm not cold. And the words were whispered into my ear. The backside of your trousers is after opening up. You definitely need a coat. So I didn't know that there was more than dogs on show when I was judging Irish setters. So that was certainly a funny incident. And I remember then, I love the Irish sense of humor, when it comes to weather. The majority shows are held outdoors. And of course, nobody likes rain and so forth. But come on, we know Ireland gets more rain than most countries. But I was judging at a show in Kotka in Finland. And I was judging, as it happened to be, Shetland sheepdogs. Now, they had this show on this kind of clay sports ground. And I'll tell you, Colm, I've seen rain, and I can remember well in Limerick, rolling straw out in the air in the woodlands. The fields were flooded. But I never saw anything like this. That pitch became a swimming pool. Yeah. And I was in the ring, and I could only see the chest. I saw no legs on the Shetland sheepdogs. So I had to try and move to somewhere on the grounds to find somewhere where I could actually see the actual dog's legs. And eventually, in one corner of the sports grounds or whatever, I got a small bit of ground that was visible. Okay. Unbeknownst to myself, when I was walking towards it, I didn't realize that I had stepped out of my shoes. I was in my socks, and over I was, looking at the movement and judging the Shetland sheepdogs with no shoes. And to this day, I've never found the shoes. I don't know where they are, but they're buried somewhere under that grounds anyway. But it was incredible, the things that happen when you judge,
Yeah, yeah.
And another incident, actually, just I think of it now, when you get on a roll, but it wasn't actually involving judging, and it was, in a sense, as you know, there's always an official dinner. There's a 2-day show, so the dinner will be on the Saturday night, and unbeknownst to me, Michael Forte decided that he was going to provide a bit of entertainment by the Irish judges, and Colm Hastings, myself, and Michael Forte.
What a trio!
We were a trio. What a trio is right. And your good wife was on the panel, I believe, but she was spared the embarrassment. But Michael called Colin and myself out, and he said, we have to do an entertainment piece. And I said, oh my God. And next thing, Michael took out these Irish green St. Patrick's Day hats, and kind of he had an umbrella, and he had, I can't remember, a couple of other things anyway. And he said, there's going to be a piece of music on when we go into the room, and follow my lead. And I said, oh my God, what the hell is this going to be about? So anyway, in we go to the room was packed, and next thing, the music for Riverdance comes on. So the three of us had to do an enactment of Riverdance. And by God, did we do it badly. But it was such laughter. But, you know, these things that happen, you know, when you're away. But, you know, it was a piece of fun.
And if anybody has video footage of that incident, please post it on Facebook tonight. So if you couldn't live in Ireland, is there a country you'd like to live in?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose there's several countries I like, but one country that I really feel I've always enjoyed it, I've been there so many times now, is Italy, and in particular Tuscany. I think Italy is the most beautiful country. I love food, I love nice wine, but Tuscany has a beauty on its own. And I think if I was to live anywhere in the morning, if I could afford it, Italy is not cheap. But, you know, it's an amazing country. But that particular region is just, it's very dear to me. And I just love that culture, the environment. I just love it. It's a beautiful, beautiful country, and in particular that area. Yeah. So that's certainly
Italy. It's lovely, beautiful, beautiful place. So, final question, Anthony. If you could write your epitaph, what would it be?
I could say very quickly, I did it my way, but you know, I hope, and I'd like to think that you know, when I go and judge, I always give it 100%. Everybody gets the same time and concentration and from myself. I pride myself in being honest and truthful, and I hope that people, whether they've won or not won under me, can say, well, Anthony Kelly is a nice judge. Don't always agree with him, but he always puts his heart and soul into it. And to me, that would be the best tribute of all, is to be acknowledged. And it's not a popularity competition. No, of course it's not. But I hope people feel that as a judge and as a person that I come across as that nice person and a good and honest, respectful judge. So that's what I would like to carry away from the hobby I'm involved in.
Super. Anthony, thank you very much. It's been thoroughly enjoyable. Time has flown by. Stay safe.
You too, Colin.
I know you're working away. Next week, my guest, we travel all the way to Greece next week, and my guest will be George Kostopoulos. And apologies to George if I have pronounced that wrong. But in the meantime, Anthony, once again, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, Colin. And sorry for the technical glitch, but these things happen.
Absolutely.
And listen, Colin, just to say, actually, just before you go, probably an occasion that took me by surprise. I was judging Best in Show at the Munster Canine Association, and this is true to you more so. But it actually showed three things to me. I had a fantastic lineup on the day, and I picked an American Cocker handled by yourself, and I'll never forget, it was Sean Carroll and Stephen Minogue, who were second and third to you, I think, on the day. And they congratulated you, and they genuinely were so happy. I'm trying to think, it was Movie Maker or something was the name.
It was
and I remember saying, somebody said it's his first Best in Show, and I said, no way. I feel we kind of grew up together. We've gone through the passage together, but I was astounded. Well, I was surprised that it was your first Best in Show. I know they're not easy to come by, but I was so delighted for you that it was. But I was equally delighted to see, because I know Sean and so Steve, both competitive. They all want to win Best in Show, but they were genuinely happy to see you get that award that day. So it's great to see that people, it was not all about the winning, they were genuinely happy
There's
for
a
you.
great camaraderie in Irish dogs.
Absolutely, 100%. So listen, thank you very much, Colin, and I'm really thankful for being invited on as a guest.
My pleasure. Enjoy the rest
Cheers,
of your
Colin.
evening.
Stay safe.